Hello Yetis and Yordles, my name is TBSky, and the Nunu rework has finally been revealed, and we're going to be doing a bunch of videos about him. We're going to be doing a full What's the Deal with Nunu video, Nunu and Willump. They have actually been, their champion name has been changed to Nunu and Willump. We're going to be doing a full What's the Deal video on them once they are released to the live servers, once they're fully released, because that's the point where we're going to have their lore, and we're going to be having their color story, all of it fully revealed, so that we can start assessing what kind of character is and analyzing it in that way. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a comparison video between old Nunu and new Nunu. I'm going to be talking about some of the themes that are present in the character design, like what the character is supposed to be like, talking about how these two character designs stack up against each other. Spoiler alert, old Nunu does not stack up well against anything. But today, we're going to be addressing a question that tends to come up a lot when Riot do these reworks, and something that's going to be coming up a lot more in the future because Riot have committed to delivering more updates than new champions in the future. So like, this is something we're going to have to be talking about. When is a rework, and when is a rework just a new champion in disguise? This is something that's come up a number of times before, and it leads to some very interesting questions about how exactly we approach what a League of Legends champion is, how we approach, like, how we judge them, how we even think about these characters. Now, there's a few different kinds of reworks that Riot like to do. First, there is the Nunu level rework, where, like, they're not the old characters and the new characters really aren't the same at all. Like, there's really very little preserved between old Nunu and new Nunu. They're not at all the same character, really. They're sort of the same concept that's just taken and then they have started it over from scratch, right? So it's kind of another attempt at the exact same idea. And that's your characters like Tarek, who is very much unrecognizable in his new state. Your Gallios, who was a massive change. A lot of people were actually quite unhappy with old Gallio disappearing because new Gallio was a very, very different thing. The same thing goes for characters like Swain and characters like Yorick. And then you have sort of the mid-level, sort of the polish-up rework. The one that's not really meant to change the character in any substantial way. It's just kind of meant to bring them into line with what modern League of Legends look like. And that's your Karthuses, your Sorakas, and Master Yi. Especially Master Yi is a champion who, like, 99% of his character design was really preserved from this to the rework. They just kind of took away the stupid swords on his feet and the pizza feet that he'd got going on because they were kind of pointless elements of the design, but otherwise he was mostly unchanged. Same thing goes for a character like Rise, who's been reworked a bunch of times, but where it's never really been about changing anything fundamental about the character. It's just kind of been about bringing him in line with the modern Liga aesthetic. And I would say the same thing also goes for a character like Aatrox. Now, a lot of people would disagree with me on that Aatrox was not just a rework, that he was a completely new champion. A lot of people were very unhappy about that, I understand, but at least in my conception, like in my list, and I'm the one who's making it, so I get to decide. In my list, Aatrox is on that list of champions who just kind of got a glow up, who just kind of got brought into line with what a modern League of Legends champion is like. Why did I put Evelyn here? She was a complete rework. Oh well. Then you have characters like Poppy, where it starts to get a little bit more muddy, because Poppy's lore was completely and utterly changed. Like, it was very much reworked for her to essentially, she was present at the founding of Demacia, and she's a legendary hero who carries a hammer around searching for, like, that was a completely different thing from what she used to be when she was the ambassador from Bandle City to Demacia, which was a very different thing. But character design wise, she's really, like, outside of just having, she's mostly a glow up, really. Like, she's mostly just kind of a polishing up where, like, the shield got smaller, the hammer got bigger, the colors were changed, but the character design itself is very much the same as it was. And that's kind of where you get into that gray area of, if the entire story of the character is changed, but the character design is sort of mostly the same, does that count as a full rework? Like, could you call that a completely new champion? And how much of a champion needs to change before something is a complete rework? Finally, we have the rarest kind of rework, something that's only happened twice to my knowledge, which is the Akali-style rework, where it's not about, where the rework is used as an opportunity to progress the champion's story. It's Akali and Gangplank are pretty much the only two champions I can think of the top of my head who have had that kind of rework, where Akali went from, like, a young ninja sort of in training, still serving the order, to a rebellious ninja who just doesn't want to serve in the stupid order anymore, going out to find her own way. And Gangplank went from a pirate lord of Bilgewater to a former pirate lord of Bilgewater missing an arm because misfortune ousted him in a coup. And this leads to an interesting Ship of Theseus question. Now, if you're not familiar, the Ship of Theseus is a thought experiment that philosophers have been, discussing for many hundreds of years, and essentially it goes like this. There is a ship called the Ship of Theseus. It is, it's made of timber, it's made of rope, it's got sails, it's got everything that a ship needs to have. And so it goes out sailing for a few years. And after a few years, a little piece of a thing broke off, like just a door handle or something just broke off and fell off, and they had to replace it. And then you ask the question, is it still the same ship? We have replaced one door handle. Is the Ship of Theseus still the same ship? Most people at that point would probably say, yeah, of course it's the same ship. You've just replaced one door handle. Like, it's not really substantially changed. And then the ship goes sailing again. And then something slightly larger breaks, like maybe some of the ropes in the rigging rot and need to be replaced as well. So they take away the ropes from the rigging, put some new ropes up in the rigging. Is it still the same ship? And most people would still say, yeah, because that's just the rope. Like, that's not really part of the ship, is it? Then the ship gets into a storm, and it crashes, and the mast breaks in the wind. So the mast, which is a big part of the ship, has to be taken out. It has to be replaced with a completely new mast. One that looks identical, but which is made from different timbers and is of a different age than the rest of the ship. And that's when you ask the question, is it still the same ship? And here people will usually start to divide themselves a little bit. When somebody says, well, no, because we've replaced a substantial part of the ship, so it's not really the same ship anymore. It's just mostly the same ship. Where other people would say, no, it's still the same ship. Just because the mast breaks doesn't mean the ship is broken. And that's kind of how the thought experiment progresses, is you change progressively more and more and more about the thing. And the question is, at what point does it stop being the old thing and start being a completely new thing that can't be called the same as the old one? And one of the conclusions that a lot of people have arrived at is that there is no point. Like, there is no specific line. There is no percentage. It's not like 51% of the ship. What if we changed 51% of the ship by taking out, like, little splinters from every single plank in the ship until we had 50% of the ship removed? And then we put new splinters in place of it, like where most of each and every single individual part of the ship is still the original one, but the total mass of the ship is now 50% something else. Is it still the same ship? Like, and there's all these gradients, and the conclusion people generally arrive at is there is no line. There is no one moment where you can say, oh, the thing transitions from one into another. And I think you see where I'm going here. At what point is a rework of the old champion, and at what point does it become just a completely new champion who's been changed too much to still be called the old one? And I would argue that, much like with the Ship of Theseus, the answer is going to turn out to be fuzzy, a little bit gray, a little bit in between, because I would argue that a character like Swain is not the same character at all. Like, because old Swain was the tyrant of Noxus. He was a dude who schemed for power and who hates Jarvan with a passion, and he wanted to seize power, and he wanted to have a completely new thing for him. And that was very much what the old champion was about, but the new champion is a visionary. He's someone who's not taking power for his own sake, who's not taking power for his own gains, but because he has seen a future that he's desperate to prevent. He has seen what needs to be done, and he's determined to do it. He's a Machiavellian, someone who acts for the good of Noxus, even if his actions, each and every one of them, might not be good on their own. And the character designs could barely be any more different, like just the amount of hair alone, but even the colors, the outfit they wear. Like, the new Swain doesn't even have a bird sitting on him. New Swain doesn't use a cane. This is a completely new character, in my estimation. A completely new character who really doesn't have that much to do with the old one, except they share a relatively similar concept. So is this Swain still Swain? Is it's like, because they start from the same general concept, they start from the same general idea, but they're executed so differently that it's hard to say that they're the same one. But then on the other hand, we have someone like Poppy, who is like way the hell up here, where it's like the story is so different. Like, there's really very little overlap between their stories. She's not even connected to Bandle City anymore, really. She just fucked off. She has no connection to politics. She's no connection to like the upper echelons of what goes on in Demacia and so on. She's really a very different character. But the character design is like, yeah, it's different, but just small blue Yordle with white hair and a big hammer who wears scale mail and who wears some armor and some sensible boots and stuff. It's like, that's why it gets a little bit more fuzzy. And then we get to a character like Soraka, where, like, yeah, the character model changed kind of a lot and for the better, but the story, again, is very much the same. Like, Soraka changed character model completely. It's the same concept, but it's a very, very different execution. It's a very different character design that comes out at the end. But the story is pretty much the same. Like, eventually they had to retcon Warwick out of it, but the story between them was very much similar and the same. It's the same thing with Karthus. It's like, where is this a completely new champion? Because nothing of the old character model remains. None of the old assets, none of the old noises, none of the old textures, none of the old nothing remains. The entire character model has been changed, but on the other hand, it's kind of hard to say that it's just a completely new champion. There's no connection. It's not at all the same thing as the old one. Because, no, they're the same character design. They're just rendered in different styles with different amounts of graphical processing and stuff. And where do you draw that line? And more interestingly, perhaps, at what point does that change from one character to another mean that Riot have essentially taken away the thing you bought from them? If you bought it at all, like if you didn't pay for it with influence points. Like, imagine you paid RP, full price, when Galio was first released, and then eventually Riot go, oh, we're taking away your Galio. He's not in the game anymore. The thing you bought and paid for is gone, but you get this thing instead. Is that a replacement of equal value? Have you been stolen from? First of all, no, you haven't, because the terms of service and the end-user license agreement has terms in it that make it pretty clear that if Riot decide to change something about the game, you can't do shit about it. You have no legal rights to make any kind of a complaint. But I'm talking here more of a thought experiment way, in an ethical way. When Riot changes a character so completely, have they essentially stolen from you a thing that you purchased? Have they essentially taken away from you something that you might have spent money on and replaced it with something else that has unequal value? Whether, like, maybe you think new Galio is a much greater value, but it's not the same value as the old one. That's an interesting question, and, like, I think it's something that eventually the game industry is probably going to have to deal with in terms of like, how we consider these things, because League of Legends Season 1, how different is that from League of Legends Season 2? Not that much, right? Like, there's some changes, there's new champions and stuff, but it's not that different. How different is Season 2 from Season 3? How different is Season 3 from Season 4? It's not, like, from season to season, major changes happen, but mostly it's still the same core game. But take League of Legends Beta and compare it to League of Legends Season 9, and you'd be hard-pressed to say that these are the same video game at all. So many of the mechanics have changed, so many of the items have gone, so many new, like hundreds, like fucking, how many champions did League of Legends launch with? 40, right? So it's been 100 new champions pretty much since then, which have changed everything about the game, and so many of the old character models, the old champions, and the old stories are gone. League of Legends is surely a completely new game, but Ship of Theseus, where do you draw the line between the two? These are interesting questions. And so we come to the issue of having the old champions replaced with new ones. When Riot released this new Nunu, who in my estimation is pretty much just a completely new character, like there's really very little of the old Nunu left except the base concept. When they released this Nunu to the live servers, is it still the same Nunu? Like, did they take something away from you? Did they steal from you the opportunity to experience old Nunu? To experience what playing this character is like? Even, like, I know, old Nunu sucks. I think old Nunu sucks. I think the replacement is a clear upgrade. I really could not be arsed to get upset about it at all. Who cares? Old Nunu was crap. It's every way possibly an improvement, but you're still having something taken away from you. You're still being deprived of the opportunity to experience what this is. And the thing to me that kind of struck me is, you know how Nintendo recently shut down a bunch of emulation sites, and there's been a lot of discourse in the gaming press about how this is a problem for holding on to game history, because Nintendo are not willing to allow much of the stuff that's hosted on emulation sites to be available to the public. Like, they don't want to sell it, they don't want to make it available to us, the virtual console doesn't provide it, so there's a lot of old games, a lot of gaming history, a history which surely belongs to all of us, that's inaccessible to us because Nintendo has the lock and key and they're not intent on opening the doors anytime soon. And a lot of people are sort of, we really have to consider, like, it's important to maintain the history of these games. And I ask a question similarly of a game like League of Legends, of these MOBAs, isn't it kind of important to have a snapshot of what League of Legends was the first time it was released to the public, to have a playable build of the very first beta, of the very first alpha? Isn't it kind of important to have playable builds of each patch to chart the history? This is one of the most influential video games in recent history, whether we like it or not, from the monetization scheme to the gameplay style to like the focus on multiplayer and the ways in which they release content and stuff like that. League of Legends has influenced a ton of games out there in the gaming space, and will probably have influence far into the future. Isn't it kind of important to preserve that history? Where does that go when they rework a champion? Where does that champion go in our history? Where is it archived? Where is it taken care of? The same thing goes for old gaming builds. Like, where are they? What they're taken away from us. Anyway, this all got very philosophical very quickly. And the thing perhaps people are more interested in me talking about is whether it makes sense to talk about old Nunu and new Nunu as the same champions. And no, I mean, I generally agree. When Riot does a rework as complete as these, it is a question of, not so much a question of a rework as it is a question of a new champion release that replaces an old one. And the reason why that feels bad is not just because, like, some people liked old Swain. They like the playstyle. They want to keep playing that playstyle. That's not going to be available to them anymore. That sucks. But it's because we also have an instinctual aversion to loss. It's called loss aversion. Like, it's a psychological concept that's very well explored. But essentially what it means is that we dislike losing more than we like winning. As a species, just on a fundamental psychological level, this is generally true. A person would rather not lose $100 than gain $100. Like, if you gave them the option between the two, a person would rather not lose 100 than gain 100. Like, losing the 100 causes more pain than the gain causes pleasure, even though on an objective level they should be equal losses and gain. They should cancel out, right? And the thing is, like, if you tell a person if I'll take $100 from you, and then 2 years down the line I'll give you $200, or I can give you $100 now, people will go for the $100 now more than they will give away $100 and get $200 several years down the line because of delayed gratification issues. The human brain is kind of complexly wired when it comes to these things, and generally speaking, we don't like losing something that we've come to expect or we've become familiar with more than we're excited for gaining new things. And I think that's part of the reason, part of the explanation why whenever there's a rework, whenever there's a rework that makes substantial changes to anything in League of Legends, people get on the subreddit, people get on the internet, they get upset, they make videos like, this is not at all the same thing anymore, that's been taken away from me, I've lost this thing has been taken from me, I have lost it. And that feels a lot worse than whatever new thing they have given me instead, which is the same reason why, I think it's part of the same reason why people get upset when there's a new patch that changes some fundamental gameplay aspect or takes away an item that people have come to rely on or something that has been important to their playstyle, because even if it's toxic to the game, even if it causes bad play, even if it's not fun to play against or play as, it still feels worse to lose that old thing than to gain whatever new thing they're replacing it with. Now, it's not black and white. It's not every time you lose something, it's gonna feel terrible, awful, just awful. Like, for instance, like if you have a nail in your foot that hurts and someone offers to take it out, you're not gonna be upset about having the nail taken out. You're gonna be happy that it's gone, and you're gonna accept whatever bandage they give you instead of a hole in your foot. But absent all other things, we are loss averse. We don't like losing. Which surely is understandable. Like, people still lament the loss of old Yorick, even though old Yorick was crap. Like, he looks like crap. From what I understand from Yorick mains, he kind of plays like crap. He's only really fun if you really one-trick your way into him and you really enjoy the shitty playstyle that he's got. And it's the same thing with Nunu. Like, old Nunu is a meme. Disco Nunu. Like, nobody thinks Nunu is healthy for the state of the game. Nobody thinks Nunu is a particularly fun champion under most circumstances. He's not a positive for the game, but I think for a lot of people, it's still gonna feel worse to lose this than to gain that. And I've already seen people complaining. Like, I've already seen people be upset that old Nunu is going away, that this is no longer going to be in the game, that instead of just doing like the same character model but with some slightly better animation and stuff, that Riot went and completely changed everything about him. And I can't say I don't understand it, even if I heavily disagree that anything of value was really lost with Nunu. But yeah, people have been asking me about my thoughts on this issue for a long time, and my thoughts on this issue, as it turns out, are kind of wanky and pretentious and cite old philosophical concepts about, you know, the reality of nature and the thingness of a thing and so on and so forth, because that's just the kind of nerd that I am. So if you've enjoyed this video, there's a like button down below. I encourage you to click on it because, you know, algorithms and stuff, I don't really understand it, but nonetheless, it's encouraged. There's also a subscribe button, and there's also a bell icon, so you can actually subscribe. And at this point, with YouTube just kind of randomly deciding not to show videos in people's subscription feeds, I would kind of recommend that you subscribe to me, that you follow me on Twitter as well, because I'll post my videos over there, and then maybe you'll have a chance of finding them. Unless, of course, Twitter also decides not to show them to you, in which case I don't know what the fuck you're gonna do. I don't know. Check my channel every once in a while, I guess. If you've not liked this video, then there is a dislike button down below, and you can click on it now if you want to, but honestly, I would wait like just a couple of weeks, because we've got a rework for the dislike button coming on, and we've tried to stay true to the identity of the dislike button. We've tried to sort of hold on to some of the same lore concepts and the same themes that were explored in the original dislike button, but we've made some changes to the kit, and we've made some changes to the way it feels to click on, that we think is really going to resonate with the, you know, the modern YouTube audience, that just the feeling of engaging with this part of the YouTube experience is going to feel a lot better to a lot of us. And I know perhaps there's going to be some people who are a little bit upset about losing some of the aspects that they loved about the old dislike button. We're very aware of this, and, you know, we do apologize for that kind of loss, but in order to keep this experience competitive in a modern market, we really do have to update parts of our servers every once in a while. So if you want to click the dislike button now, you can, or you can wait just a few weeks when we will have a full rework, new textures, new voice lines, new everything for the dislike button that we think are going to be a lot more fun. Finally, if you have $1 that you don't need, and you don't mind me having that $1 to use on stuff like food and rent and you know, frivolous millennial spending like that, avocado toasts, I don't know, what do millennials spend their money on? I mostly spent mine on not being homeless. Then you can head on over to the Patreon. There's a link down in the description. Going to be coming up on screen briefly, where you can go, and if you want to spare that $1 for me, I would be very grateful for it. Thank you so very much for watching, and yeah, I'm quite excited about this Nunu. I'm interested in doing more videos about this.